Shocking news today, but I doubt it'll get much press because the victims are the military and to a lesser degree, Alberta. Two things that the media party doesn't really care for. This is a press release from the Royal Canadian Air Force. The headline, Postponement of Exercise Maple Flag. I'll read the press release in a moment, but let me tell you first what Maple Flag is, in case you don't know it by name. It's an annual Air Force training exercise held in Cold Lake, Alberta, where our Canadian fighter pilots fly along with pilots from other countries. NATO countries, especially our American allies, as well as non-NATO countries too, including Australia, New Zealand, Israel, even Singapore. So we're practicing with our allies, which is pretty important because when we go to war these days, actually for a long time, it's always with allies. So it's important to practice that. It's not an air show. This is not hanging out and having fun. This is as real as it gets. It was modeled after the Red Flag training program in the United States that dates back to Vietnam, where a group of top U.S. fighter pilots train in enemy tactics. They learn how to fly like the Soviet Union's Air Force would fly, or how, I don't know, China would fly. And then American and other countries' fighter jet pilots practice in real life against that red team that's pretending to be the enemy. Obviously, they don't actually shoot each other's down. But it's not just a classroom simulation or a flight simulator. They're actually tearing it up in the skies for a couple of weeks. It's probably the most important training a fighter pilot ever does, it seems to me. Canada set up our version called Maple Flag 40 years ago, and it's held every year. In fact, it's only been canceled 4 times in the last 40 years, and that was when Canada had a significant Air Force deployment overseas, so they couldn't go to the war games. For example, during the first Iraq War or Kosovo or the more recent Libyan operation. But every other year for 40 years, it's on. And Cold Lake, Alberta is the perfect place for it, mainly because it's so huge and also because of the landscape. This really is the key annual event for the Air Force. It's a couple of weeks long, like I say. It's not just the one day. They do air-to-air combat. They do air-to-ground combat. It's not just fighter jets either. It's refueling aircraft. It's everything. And Justin Trudeau just canceled it. And this year, it's not because our Air Force is off to war, but because Justin Trudeau has starved our Air Force of money. Here, let me read from the Air Force press release itself. The Royal Canadian Air Force has decided not to conduct exercise Maple Flag in 2019. The RCAF will use the opportunity to refocus its resources to update the exercise's mandate and to modernize the infrastructure used during the exercise. The RCAF will thereby ensure that Maple Flag remains focused and relevant to fighter operations in a dynamic and fluid battle space now and into the future. There's a lot of baffle-gab and jargon in there, isn't there? So let me translate into plain English for you. They don't have the money or the support. So they're going to take a year off, or who knows, maybe longer. They're going to refocus, as in they'll spend what little money they have on doing other things. Modernize the infrastructure used. Who knows what that means? Maybe it means that our fighter jets are now so old that they can't really integrate with our allies anymore. I mean, the United States is using the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning IIs. They started flying the Raptor in 2005. They started flying the F-35 just 3 years ago. I've seen the F-35 in action, or at least, I mean, not shooting things, but flying. When I was in Israel this summer, it was incredible. We had also seen F-15s at that same event in Israel, which are amazing too, but then the F-35 took to the sky, and it was like the difference between a Porsche and a Model T Ford. The F-35 is amazing compared to even amazing planes like the F-15. And we're still flying CF-18s in Canada that we first acquired in 1983. That is 35 years ago. Most of the pilots of the F-18s are younger than the airplanes. Trudeau's plan to modernize our CF-18s is to buy more used F-18s from Australia. And those were acquired by the Australian Air Force starting in 1984. I'm not kidding. So we're buying used F-18s off Australia, And Australia gets to use that cash to buy new F-35s, just like America and Israel are. I wonder which it is. Has Trudeau cut the funds to Maple Eagle so deeply that they just can't afford to pay for it? Or are our CF-18s and other equipment just so old we can't even integrate and interoperate with our allies anymore? Or is it both? This press release is both infuriatingly vague and pitiful, as if the decision were made by the Air Force itself, as opposed to Justin Trudeau and the Minister of Defense. As usual, they're blaming the military itself. Oh, but Harjit Sajjan, he'll take credit for the military successes, including lying that he was actually the architect of the big combat mission in Afghanistan. That's called stolen valor, by the way. All right, back to the press release. Let me read some more. After careful consideration, we will not conduct Exercise Maple Flag in 2019. We are planning to ensure we have the right capabilities at hand while working to ensure we are able to meet the evolving training needs of Canada and our allies, said Lieutenant General Al Meinzinger, commander of the RCAF, by pausing to evaluate Maple Flag, including its role and conduct in future years. I am confident we will be able to deliver a revitalized training experience that will build on the legacy of excellence for which Maple Flag is known in Canada and around the world. I am so sad for the guy who had to sign his name to that. But did you notice something there? There were three different excuses. The first was they were refocusing resources, as in they didn't have the cash to do everything, so they had to make choices and they cut this critical training program. Then they had the second excuse. They have to modernize infrastructures, and we can't really fly next to F-35s. And the third excuse is, well, we don't really think Maple Flag is necessarily the way to go. We're going to reassess the most effective Air Force training program in the country. So effective, we've done it for 40 years, and countries from around the world come to join us. Now, we're going to evaluate it by stopping it. Don't you always do that? I'm not sure why you need to stop it to evaluate it. Isn't evaluating it usually done by some bean counter in an office or something? Not sure why it has to be stopped to evaluate it, other than this is another lie. They've tried out three excuses, hoping that one will stick. Look, I'm not blaming Lieutenant General Meinzinger. I'm sure he's a good guy. He himself flew helicopters. He had some deployments. He was in Haiti. He did some tours of duty in Afghanistan. He's a real guy, obviously. And he's obviously not in charge of the RCAF's budget. That's Trudeau and Sajjan. They then tell Meinzinger how much money he has, and then they go back to their jet-setting ways. That's the one jet Trudeau will never scrimp on, will he? Here's a planted story recently in the CBC state broadcaster about how poor old Justin Trudeau has to fly in a 31-year-old luxury private jet when he goes on his vacations to Billionaire Island in Bahamas. Read this story and have a heart, will you? This is in the CBC. Canada looking at replacing a VIP aircraft and fleet as they hit 31st birthday. And then the subheadline there, in 2013, the ashtrays were finally removed from the seats and the plane got a new coat of paint. Wow, I can only imagine the suffering that they had. It finally got a new coat of paint, and the humiliation of sitting in a private jet that had ashtrays until 2013. Luckily, thank God, Justin Trudeau had to never suffer that indignity, as he didn't become Prime Minister for another 2 years. But we obviously need to buy the man a new luxury jet, so let's write a story about it in the state broadcaster. They're softening you up, by the way, for when they buy one. Our Air Force fighter pilots have to make do with CF-18s that are 35 years old. They're being replaced with 34-year-old fighter jets from Australia, but the CBC wants to soften up public opinion to buy a new private jet for Trudeau because, of course, they fly in his jet too as reporters. All right, back to Meinzinger. He said that Maple Flag is paused. Really? Because he didn't say when it would return, did he? He didn't even confirm that it would return at all. Because if he doesn't have the money now, why would he have it next year? If his equipment is outdated today, why would it be any newer next year as more and more allies get the new F-35s? Let me read some more from the press release. The exercise is primarily conducted in the Cold Lake Air Weapons Range, a vast, restricted training area of more than 1 million hectares located about 70 kilometers north of Four Wing, Cold Lake, Alberta. Well, there's part of the answer, isn't it? If this were in Quebec, well, they'd back up the Brinks truck with cash, but it's in Alberta, and they're sort of gross, right?
Quebecers are better than the rest of Canada because, we're Quebecers.
Yeah. And that's not just a one-off. Remember this?
Regardez, le Canada fait dur maintenant parce que c'est des Albertains qui contrôlent notre agenda communautaire et socio-démocratique. Ça marche pas.
Yeah. I mean, Trudeau has given, just as a gift, $1 billion to Bombardier. Not for Air Force jets, to subsidize their corporate jets that they sell to foreign buyers. So we're actually giving money to a private airplane manufacturer to subsidize foreign countries, and Bombardier, they just pocket the money, including massive bonuses to their Quebec executives. By the way, the United States thinks that's an unfair trade practice, which it obviously is, so they've started a trade complaint against Bombardier, and that is literally why Trudeau has refused to buy modern F-35s. He's punishing Donald Trump for objecting to his bailout of Bombardier. Imagine if Trudeau gave the $1 billion, instead of to Bombardier, to our Canadian Air Force. And I don't mean to buy himself a version of Air Force One. Just stop right there. I mean for our pilots. And I'm not going to read the whole press release. I mean, it's like when you catch a child sneaking a cookie or something, right? I mean, the longer the excuse or explanation for why their homework isn't done, the more intricate the excuse, the more laughable. It's cute with kids, but it's just embarrassing when a lieutenant general has to fib on behalf of his liberal bosses. Let me read a little more. With the many technological advancements in military aviation over the decades, there has emerged a need for training methods and infrastructure to advance as well, continued Lieutenant General Meinzinger. Our adversaries are innovating, and so must we and our allies. Yeah, the Americans aren't shutting down their training versions of Maple Eagle. Don't think shutting down training is the same as innovating your training. But I don't think anyone is dumb enough to believe that you innovate in a battle training exercise by not having that battle training exercise. No one is that dumb, other than the Trudeau Liberal staffer who wrote this and told the RCAF to sign it. This news is devastating to the Air Force. It is devastating to its capacity to do its job. It is devastating to our role as Canada within allied air forces, NATO, NORAD, our other allies. This is really our way of announcing to the world, because remember, this is an international training event. We are telling the world that we just can't keep pace anymore. We're out. You guys go ahead. We'll be back here with those Australian F-18s. This is devastating to morale in our Air Force, obviously. No equipment, no pay, now not even training. And of course it's devastating to Alberta, home of Cold Lake, where these exercises have been important for the community. Oh well. There used to be a major Canadian Forces base in Calgary, but then Calgary voted for the Reform Party and Edmonton voted in a couple of Liberal MPs. So Jean Chrétien shut down the Calgary base as a punishment and moved it up to Edmonton as a reward. Now I doubt Trudeau will move anything. He's shutting things down. He's not just moving them around, but it will obviously go to Quebec if he does move it.
Quebecers are better than the rest of Canada because, we're Quebecers.
Yeah, obviously. Here's the saddest part of the press release. The RCAF remains committed to conducting Maple Flag in the future. It is a core activity for the RCAF fighter force and provides personnel with an outstanding opportunity to train on Canadian territory alongside their partners and allies to develop and practice common tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's too early to say exactly what changes will take place or what our timeline will be, said Lieutenant General Meinzinger. I'm sorry, that's just sad. But did you catch that? The RCAF remains committed to it, but they're not really the deciders, are they? Justin Trudeau and Harjit Sajjan are, and they're nowhere to be found in this press release or on this issue. Haven't seen them tweet about it or press release about it. They think it's more important to, I don't know, send our military on a fool's errand to Mali. Can you find Mali on a map? Here's a hint, it's in Africa. Narrow it down a bit. Can you still find it on a map? I didn't think so. Can you name any possible Canadian national interest we have in Mali? Me neither. Can you tell me why one Canadian should die there? Oh, but it will be a gender equitable mission. I am serious. That's a thing now. There's a whole website at the Department of National Defense dedicated to making feminism part of military planning. I am not kidding. Maybe that's the answer for Maple Flag. Just, I don't know, just girl it up somehow. Then maybe Justin Trudeau might care. Now, the lieutenant says it's too early to say if this training exercise is ever coming back. Well, I feel pretty confident in saying it's not coming back, unless Donald Trump gets on the phone with Trudeau, or who knows? I don't know. Maybe if some C-list comedian in the United States manages to catch Trudeau's eye on Twitter. Remember, just the other week, Trudeau dropped $50 million in this tweet to a C-list celebrity, a comedian on a late-night talk show in the States named Trevor Noah. And look at that language there. It's like it's pocket change to him, like it's his own money, like a big shot trying to impress a girl or something. Look at the line at the end there. Work for you? Let's do it. And he gave $50 million to a comedian. Speaking of $50 million, by coincidence, that's exactly how much he just gave a couple of months ago to the Hamas-controlled hate schools in Gaza, after other countries had cut them off because of corruption and because they were promoting terrorism. And you know, we're looking for cash. Obviously, there's the $10.5 million Trudeau just gave to Omar Khadr, something he's done with 3 more accused alleged terrorists too. Khadr was convicted. So we're coming up with $150 million, just the examples I've listed in the last 1 minute. But no money for our troops or our veterans? No. See, when it comes to veterans, then the rarely seen Trudeau, the fiscal conservative, emerges. Very rare. It's like Halley's Comet. When veterans present, then he's all about defending the taxpayer.
First of all, why are we still fighting against certain veterans groups in court? Because they are asking for more than we are able to give right now.
Yeah. I don't want to be too dramatic, but there is a name, there is a word for someone who systematically, methodically, deliberately destroys our military, disables our ability to fight, denudes our soldiers of their equipment, underpays them, demoralizes them, humiliates them, while at the same time giving tens of millions of dollars to confessed, convicted terrorists. There is a name for such a person. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.